And we are live in Resonant Essentials, the group. How are you doing today, Kristina?
I'm doing very well. Very happy to be here, Michelle.
That's wonderful. I'm so glad we get to do this. I want to tell everybody you're Kristina Daniels. You are an Animist minister. Mm-hmm. And when I first met you, I felt like, oh my gosh, she lives like I live, but probably a little more in depth because you actually took it to the next level and became a minister.
Taking it to the next level, right? daily practice of mindfulness and awareness. And yeah, it does. I just went through an ordination in being ordained, and that was a difference. This was a year-long ministry program instead of something that you apply for online. So it really was. Afterwards, I don't know what to say except that it does feel different. I feel like I'm walking in a different set of shoes right now.
Well, I'm so excited. Congratulations for you, because
thank you.
You're right. A lot of the ordinations, a lot of the people nowadays are getting certified over a weekend, and this is not like that. This is a commitment that you made to walk this path. So tell me, what did you do before and what led you to this?
That's a great question. Please help me keep it short, because it wasn't something that came about immediately. My background was actually in counseling, and I spent 20 odd years in social services working with rape crisis, domestic violence advocacy, women and families fleeing violence. I have been a teacher and worked for NMSU. I have been a disability resource counselor at CNM and with the state of New Mexico. So I really, I was connected with people in community in a way that was really first through trauma and through trying to understand how to help people heal through trauma. And in doing that, you come into your own pieces and like where our ancestry comes in, the body and the shape that I'm walking around in today. Like, what does that mean? Where is the value system there? I think that all kind of started the step work towards animism. But even as a kid, I was out in the garden. I loved flowers. I have always created things. And when I stepped away from counseling after 20 some odd years, I tried to find something that was going to be the very opposite. And I went towards my love of plants, which led me to aromatherapy and certification in aromatherapy. And you were talking about just the differences in what we can do with things. As a certified aromatherapist, it was also a 256-hour training program. It wasn't a weekend course. This involved supervised case studies.
Thank you for saying that, because I can't tell you how many people I've tried to tell them, just because somebody buys essential oils and sells them doesn't mean they're an aromatherapist. And there
is correct.
Can be contraindicated for people.
Yes.
And without that background, essential oil can actually trigger healing crises and illnesses. Thank you.
Yes. That was actually my first big advocacy piece. Was as I stepped into aromatherapy, I had to take an anatomy and physiology exam, chemistry exam. We learned the Latin names of the plants. And just like you said, because this was interesting. So at the same time I was doing aromatherapy, for whatever reason, I couldn't quite justify like being an aromatherapist. I didn't know how to do that. So I paired it up with something else. And at the tender age of 40, I dropped my former career in counseling and I went back to school in skincare. And I combined that with aromatherapy. So the way that I kind of came back in towards plants was understanding them from a chemical level, but also from this kind of beauty level. However, when I began working with the plants, and really it's a relationship, right? This is part of the animism thing. Like you were talking about the essential oils. We think about it as a consumer that it's something in a bottle, right? Like I have one right here. But this is sandalwood. I've got a little bit of a sore throat. I think that this is one of the things that I like to talk about, is that there are endangered species, and we are at a time in our planet where we're really losing a lot of our environment, and people's awareness is coming into being. And so this is part of what I talk to people about, is that this connection is to a tree. It takes a lot of plant material and tree material in order to create these tiny little bottles. And how we use them, why we're using them, and being aware of their uses prior to us using them now is really important if you are trying to kind of be an earth steward or somebody who is taking care of the earth. It's a lot of this is about awareness and mindfulness, and where at the time right now, whereas consumers, the responsibility is falling with us. Because if you are purchasing oils or plant material, and we're going to talk about that in the different kinds of plants that we've used in things that are called smudging, or what I'm calling smoke bundles, that, like, we'll talk about white sage. White sage is being way over harvested. And so we have to consider our relationship with the plants and with our planet, all of the beings on the planet, right? So the animals, the plants, the ecosystems, this is how we kind of, and if we're using this for spiritual practice, which is why I chose the smoke bundles, because I think it's important to kind of bring this into our awareness. I think people are craving connection. And this is a beautiful way to kind of get people connected back to the earth. And
Well, and I think that people don't understand. I tell this to people and they just go, kind of roll their eyes at me. You can smudge periodically, but if you're keeping the vibration of your facility or your home high, there's no reason to do this on an every other day or daily or a weekly basis. And over harvesting these plants is detrimental to us, because we need the properties of these plants. They blend with our energy in a way that it just brings tears to my eyes. You know, it's a very, and I'm sure that you as a practitioner, much more involved with animism than I am, feel this unilaterally across the planet is the best I can say. Is that it's got to affect you when you feel these plants being harvested like this.
I think it's funny, because if you talk to me with my friends, when I was in Tucson 5 years ago and was beginning to formulate and really work with the oils and the plants, because it wasn't just the bottles of, I wanted to understand the relationship with the plant. So if I was working with rosemary, I had rosemary in the garden. I was, interacting with the actual plant and having a relationship with what the plant was. That led me to the understanding that, like, it's animated, right? It is alive. There is a living essence within the plant. It does not communicate non-verbally to us. However, when we start out as humans, we tend to forget that we don't communicate verbally either. And there's a different level of communication. As mammals, as humans, we use nonverbal communication all the time. Plants use chemistry. There is, in Japan, there is a term I'm going to forget in this moment, and I'll look it up, but it is forest bathing. And this is because trees release, while they're breathing, right, they release pinene and d-limonene, and these chemicals that we're inhaling into our lungs are relaxing us, are calming down our central nervous system, offer antimicrobial benefits. So the way that we harvest, what we take, how we take, the capitalist marketplace is all about gain and greed and taking everything. And we've been walking on this earth for quite some time now as humans and as beings that keep taking. And so one of the things I remind people is, what are we giving? It's an exchange. It's as intimate with plants as our breath. Without
Yes.
oxygen and carbon dioxide, the exchange wouldn't, it's such an intimate relationship. And so my connection is very strongly through the plants. This is how I kind of explain and walk in the world. But other animists are very connected, perhaps to sacred places, to the animal kingdom. This is really, animism is the whole collection, it's the whole web. And the church that I became ordained through is called the Web of Life Church. It's out of Tucson, Arizona. And I came to it by way of a really fabulous woman, Desiree Maltzby. She was my job coach. And after we finished the coaching, we later continued a friendship. And so she told me on a walk one day that she was becoming a minister through animism. And I was just like, what is animism? And she started talking about it. And I can't even tell you, like, everything in my line up in my body, I could feel it. I was just like, that's it. Like, it's the recognition, the observation, the commitment towards balance, and recognizing that it's a whole organism. It's all alive. And when we take it to the spiritual level, then we're talking about source energy, right? That animates everything. Mm-hmm. And so how we approach it is so important. It's how we're expressing our values, how we walk in the world.
So when you're giving this class, because this class is on November 12th,
yes,
we're excited. We have it limited to 10 people because yes. It's important for each person to get their information and make their smoke bundle. So it's a small class so that everybody can get good information. Are you going to talk to them about how to approach the plant to say thank you? And I remember asking my grandmother, who was a very staunch Catholic, why do we say grace? I was young. She said, so you can thank God for the food. And I was like, okay. And then I asked a friend of mine years later, I asked her mother, why do you say prayer over your food? And she said, because we need to thank the food for giving us life.
Yes.
And that was, when I had already started studying metaphysics, and that felt so much more complete to me. Mm-hmm. Is in thanking the food for enriching our life, for sustaining us, and for laying down their life to give us life. And that's plants as well as animals. Until I can learn how to eat prana, I guess I'm just kind of stuck thinking
there might be ways.
I'm going to get there, honey. I have no it may be this life, but I will get there.
I believe you. I think I love that. I love that way of praying and acknowledging the life again of the plants. Earth worshiping cultures have done this for a long time. This was before we were in a production cycle of agriculture. People were gardening and harvesting, but they were putting back. They were thanking the animal for the life. And I was listening to a documentary just recently that was talking about an indigenous tribe up north in Canada, Alaska area, that wailed and they prayed, and the female tribe elder was connected to that whale spirit. And if the whale offered itself, that was, it was offering its life to feed the tribe. This intimate connection we share with the consumption of life, whether it's plant or animal, it's a life. And we somehow as humans we take ourselves out of the natural cycle. We somehow remove ourselves, or we put ourselves on the top of the hierarchy. And so I think animism is really trying to get people to connect. And one of the things that I loved is that this particular full circle animism talks about looking at your own your own history, your own lineage. Where are you from? Where are your ancestors originated from? Because prior to monotheistic religions worldwide, cultures practiced earth worshiping traditions and had traditions like these. So one of the things that I encourage people to do is to look at their family history, and if it's not going all the way back, if that's too much, then where are you right now? What land are you on? And who's walked on this land before you? Their steps, their cultivation, their energies are still with us. And that is all part of our ancestry. So many different ways to connect.
I think that one of the things that we forget, there's 2 white rhinos left in the world. I was watching a documentary on them. And it surprises me how the white rhinos were decimated for their horns. Their meat was not served, their spirit not respected. And there are men who stand guard over these rhinos. And I think, when we come into this world, Michael Rhodes wrote a book, Into a Timeless World. I've talked to people about this book many, many times. I love this book because he's crossing over civilizations that have been on Earth. And I'm not talking about the Roman civilization. I'm talking,
For sure.
200,000 years of civilizations in which he had gone through and seen. And in one civilization, they sang to the animal, and the animal laid down and offered it for food. And then the next civilization, you saw the advent of, for lack of a better word, more reptilian type people who had come in to take over, and they were just massacring. I think that we've forgotten that we oftentimes, as humans, we've been many other things. We've been in other worlds, in other dimensions, in other planes of existence, and even in this world, we've been every color, every gender, every identity, and we're fighting over semantics because we're of the earth. And I was so thrilled when you came in and you were of that mindset, because I know a lot of people who say I'm an animist, but they don't always understand what that means in its totality. So I'm really honored to have you coming in and talking and doing the lecture and teaching us about the smoke bundle. And I want you to come back and teach more, by the way, because I think there's a lot of animists in the making out there. I think people who really, they're going to connect and they're going to see this. So let me check to see if there's any questions or comments. Yes, Johnny says, so great to see you, Kristina. Welcome. I think you got to meet her at the center.
Yes. Hello. And hellos to all the 4-legged furry creatures.
The ones that,
because I got to meet them too.
yes, Max is in the process of getting socialized. He's doing a little bit better.
Good.
Yeah, he's doing a little better. We're working on him. Poor thing. He's living his trauma, but he's living his best life because he's with me 24/7.
Yes, nice. Well, you're also able and like providing an actively beautiful environment and wonderful place for him to heal and just be his best self. That's what we're all trying to do, right? You had mentioned people who identify with animism and maybe aren't quite in line, but I think we're all trying to find that. I stumble every day, and we were talking about the space of the class. This is a great example. There were 10 spaces, and we wanted to limit that for attention, and also because it's November and I'm harvesting. We're using live plant material in order to do the bundles. That's very limited at this time of year and what we can use. And I asked the plants permission before I take. And this is part of what we'll talk about, and just acknowledge and that full circle, because they're helping us. We also want to help them, and be open to how that is. So materials are limited also because of the time of year and the season. And again, I think this is that mindset that I can't track it to anything other than consumerism. This idea that like we can get strawberries year round, we can access things all the time. There's going to be enough sage in the world so that everybody can have some. And there is such an abundance in this world, yes, but you have to be responsible for it. You can't just take and not give, or if you just are always taking, to not expect that it's going to end. You're going to run out of resources. And so, this is part of what we need. We don't need to, but it would just be the most wonderful thing if people could begin to understand this and begin to walk in this way. I think we can I know that we can change the world. We're already changing the world.
Well,
Just this coming back in again is a way of shifting.
I have some essential oils that a friend of mine made back, and they've been preserved and carefully. They're still good. They haven't gone rancid. But they're large bottles that she made in the 80s and 90s. And she harvested the plant.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're looking at a bottle of pure lavender oil like this, I use it very sparingly, and I'm always very appreciative of it. But people don't realize that to get all these bottles of lavender, because lavender has a season and then you have to replant.
Yes.
So how much of that is truly lavender essential oil versus the chemical makeup that they make up in the laboratory to offset the pure essential oil? So they got a couple of good drops in there per 4-ounce bottle, or maybe a 2-ounce bottle has 1 drop and the rest is a chemical makeup.
You've just hit it on the nose.
Yeah.
There's no FDA regulation of essential oils. And literally, I think it's like 1% has to be considered the essential oil. So when people are buying tea tree oil or lavender from these huge wholesalers, like if you can get it at Walmart, I would probably question the authenticity of the oil. But you bring back to that point, you've mentioned this once before, Michelle, and I'm glad you came back to this, of your friend harvesting. And when I first started in both skincare and the aromatherapy, I was purchasing things through other people. And I was fortunate enough to have friends that were involved in the distillation process. And it was part of my aromatherapy certification was we did have to do distill, and we did a wild harvest. And it was the amount of plant material. I tell people that it was pinon, right? So juicy. It's a pine. It's got a lot of juice to it. And there were 13 of us in this class. We all brought a laundry bag of our laundry basket. So 13 of those. A friend and I went back, and I think we collected 4 more. They're ginormous. They're about 4 to 5 feet tall. They're very, very large. We distilled, and there was not enough essential oil that came off of that distillation to even share with the class. It was less than a 5 milliliter bottle. And that was after hours and hours. I just did a distillation myself, not of essential oil, but for the hydrolate, the distillate, which is the water. When you run in the still, when you're heating and you're chemically changing that plant, the water holds about 20% of the plant material when it goes through the process of distillation. And that is a safe way to take things in internally instead of, nobody should be drinking essential oils. It's one of the worst things that you could probably do. And I can talk about why that is at a totally different training on essential oils. But
watch people do this. And
yeah. Well, and I was one of them. I have my own stories as to how I came into the business, which was through CEU credits and professional training on the blood-brain barrier and how essential oils have a small enough size where they can pass the blood-brain barrier. That was my link in. It was when I was still a counselor. And I thought, oh my gosh, but there's a whole conversation around all of these things, and why it's so important then, because that is influencing people's chemistry, why that's so important to know what you're doing, and to be working with people ethically, instead of, if somebody's trying to sell you something, it's this funny thing, like when the bottom line is sales, then the bottom line is sales. And you have to understand that they're being very honest, and that's where their integrity is. And so that's what their goal is going to be. If you're coming to somebody for healing, and they are working with you, and they're taking a medical history, and they're taking time with you, and it's not about selling you something, it's about finding what's working for you, that's a very different process. And that's the aromatherapists, the people that I know that are certified, that are in the field, that's what they're doing. And they're combining it with incredible other practices like chiropractic care and other such.
Well, when I do my class, I have a class, Intuitive Explosion, and we talk about healing. And we talk about removing negative energy. I have planted outside my front door a rosemary bush. And when I'm feeling a little overwhelmed by whatever happened, if I'm driving or if I'm doing, I take my hand and I run it down the shaft of the rosemary bush, and I just literally coat myself, and I can feel that negativity fall off of me. It recharges me, and I haven't harmed the plant.
And you're taking in the essential oils.
Exactly.
So the essential oils are in the plant. We use heat to open up what, for layman's terms, their pores, the same way that our pores work, right? So if you are outside and you're running your hand along pinyon or rosemary or basil, right? You are inhaling the essential oils. That's why I think the connection to the plants is so big. You're missing an opportunity for a relationship and an incredible amount of teaching, not from a human, right? From the source itself.
Well, I can't handle essential oils out of a bottle. My swell up, my eyes turn red. I have a hard time breathing. It's counterproductive to me. It's like taking a can of Lysol and spraying it. My body reacts very negatively. I do have chemical issues, chemical toxicity. I don't know if that came from having worked at the uranium mines years ago. I don't know where it came from, or it just doesn't work with my vibration. I know a lot of people it does, and I've had people come in and they'll pour essential oils in their hands, and they'll lather it here and they put it on their face and sniff it. And it's like, wait a minute, you have no idea what you're doing to me. You're just stepping over that boundary. And I think the plant world must really be laughing at us now. I believe they have spirits. I believe that they have communication with us. I believe that we offer their spirit is just as viable as my dog's, as mine. We all contribute on our own level of existence as we co-create within the world that we live in. And so I'm hoping that you're going to bring that information. I don't know what we're going to talk later off camera, but I want to pick your brain about what that ordination gives you, so that you get, what do you get to do with your ordination?
I can marry people, but I could have done that before. I've actually married people before. I can conduct ceremonies. And one of the things I think about is, just with my background and kind of a commitment towards elevating women and the feminine. So not just women, but just kind of the feminine principles in general, which are accessible to everyone. I feel like, I think that there are ceremonies and some things that I'd like to do that recognize rites of passage with women, but there's a whole host of different things. There's a whole host. My big thing is I understand that I'm a teacher. I understand that the information, I take in as much information as I can. This year that I was in Animism, I have soaked myself, saturated myself with really all sorts of different philosophies on life. And you were talking about prayer, and it reminded me so much, Michelle, of like Thich Nhat Hanh and Pieces Every Step. I think we talked about that the first time we met over the phone, and that connection. There's a richness to the way that we walk in the world. So I hope to bring that. That is what I hope to bring on November 12th, as well as a lot of information. There's we can deep dive, and we can also kind of keep it where the group is at. But I plan to bring information about the plants that we're going to use and introduce people to those plants so that they can choose what they want to make the smoke bundle from. We're going to talk about the misappropriation of cultures, smudging versus smoke bundles, and why it's important to be careful with our words. And I'll get into that. I hope also to talk about kind of an umbrella of what animism is, but as we're making the bundles and as we're working with things with our hands, that we're actually just having dialogue and conversation with the group so that people can actively ask questions and we can just really.
Well, I'm really excited. I can't wait to see that happening. I just know that for them to register, they need to contact me at Michelle at Resonant. And we talked about how they can pay. I can send you their name. You can contact them and send them your link to prepay if you want to prepay, or they can pay by check or cash at the door.
Yes.
So anybody who's already registered, please confirm with me you're still wanting to be there in the registration. I will admit that if you were registered prior to last Saturday, where I think I lost the registration paper, I think I used it and threw it away. So I apologize. I've got most everybody on there. We have 6 because I just remembered another person that registered. And
and there's room for 10. So register soon or re-register. Maybe things have shifted.
Because I'm a dodo head at times. I went looking this morning, you'll laugh. I looked past this piece of paper 5 times before I realized I was looking past the piece of paper. So there you have it. That's my silliness. But
welcome to being human.
I've been committed in ways that things are getting a lot easier. We've got some great practitioners. We've got people like you coming in to teach classes. We have some amazing opportunities for people to participate at the center. And with that being said, look, I did it again. I can tell you I did it again. I did it again. Anyway, I will put this gentleman's name down who's coming. And because I had it out because somebody else signed up.
Well, look at this. This is wonderful. Michelle, this is wonderful. You're being just tossed abundance right now in all sorts of different ways.
You know what?
So yes, everybody, please help Michelle by reaching out and saying how excited you are. And we're hoping that you're even more enthusiastic, because this interview was really to introduce and get dialogue started so people could say like, gosh, I want to be there. This is exciting. This, I want to know more.
I'm writing the ones down that I remember. I do know, and I will reach out to everybody. Anyway, I dearly love everybody for signing up. And I dearly love everybody for coming in to circle with us to do this. So I will find my papers. I'm inundated. I'm trying to catch up.
I'm happy.
I will plead temporary insanity. I'm editing my book. I've got the author's copy, so I'm doing the last read through,
Wow.
and my book should be released somewhere in the next 2 weeks if I can get it finished.
Congratulations. Congratulations. That's that other link that we have, the writing piece. So I'm so glad. That's such a big deal. I remember how big of a deal that is. So, oh, hello. It's so wonderful to see. Oh,
Did
hello,
he lick-
darling.
lick
He
my
is.
face? He doesn't lick his butt. Dog, I know.
Ah, bundles of love. Bundles and bundles of love.
Anyway,
I look forward to seeing you in November. We're going to have a great time. It's going to be wonderful. I like nothing more than to talk about plants, and I like nothing more than to get other people excited about the plants and their ways of using them. So
I recreated the list. I did it. I did
yay!
it. I knew exactly what was coming. So just make sure by sending me a text and checking in that if you want to pre-register, I'll send you over to Kristina. Thank you,
I
Kristina.
can't wait. I can't wait to meet people. So thank you so much, Michelle. Have a wonderful day.
You too. Bye now.
Bye.